Ever get that feeling like something's missing? Like modern life is great and all, but are we really meant to just scroll through social media all day and feel isolated?
Yeah, it's like we're wired for something more, like deeper connections.
Right. And that's what we're diving into today. Utopian communities, these groups throughout history who tried to build a better way of living.
It's fascinating, right? Like this recurring dream humanity keeps having to create a better society.
Exactly. And the thing is, we're not talking about some theoretical utopia. We're talking real life attempts to create these societies, experiments in living almost.
hmm
And those experiments might just hold some surprising lessons for us today.
Absolutely. Like, are we missing something? Could these communities from the past have answers for our present?
That's what we're here to find out. To guide us, we're drawing insights from Dr. Kristen Godsey.
An expert on communal living. She's amazing.
She really is. And we're looking at her conversation with historian Dan Snow on his podcast, Dan Snow's History Hits.
Oh, yeah, they really went deep on this one, all the way back to ancient Greece.
Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Ancient Greece. Wasn't that all about city-states, democracy, togas?
Right, right. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Pythagoras, the guy with the theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Right, Pythagoras, the math whiz.
That's the one.
I never knew he was into, like, communal living.
Oh, yeah. He was way ahead of his time. He founded one of the earliest documented utopian communities.
Really? What, like living together, sharing stuff?
All that. Shared property, radical equality, even gender equality way before it was a thing.
Whoa, hold on. So they were, like, super progressive back then in ancient Greece.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
But it totally makes sense. This community thrived on these values. Communal meals, shared chores, decisions made together, total opposite of how things usually worked back then. And it wasn't just about ideals either. This environment fostered incredible intellectual growth.
Interesting. So they were putting these ideas into practice and seeing real results.
Exactly. And here's a crazy detail. The world's first named female mathematician, Tano, she flourished in this community.
No way. A female mathematician in ancient Greece. It makes you think, right, how many brilliant minds have we missed out on because they weren't given the chance?
That's exactly what Dr. Godsey highlights. These communities weren't just about living differently. It was about unlocking human potential, the kind of potential that traditional social structures often stifle.
So if these communities were so successful, why didn't they become the norm? Why didn't everyone jump on board?
Right. It's the big question, isn't it? And Dr. Godsey tackles it head on.
So what's the answer?
Well, one possibility she suggests is that challenging the status quo, especially when it comes to power, it's tough.
Yeah, those in power usually want to stay there.
Exactly. It's like that saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
Oof, yeah, makes sense.
And sometimes those who dared to imagine and live differently, they faced serious consequences.
Wow, that's heavy. So their efforts were for nothing then.
Not at all. Their ideas, their practices, they inspired others throughout history. They planted seeds for future generations.
That's kind of inspiring, actually. Even if these communities didn't last forever, they showed a different way of life was possible.
Absolutely. And that's powerful. It keeps the dream alive.
So, are we sticking with ancient Greece for this whole deep dive, or are there other examples of these utopian experiments?
Oh, we've barely scratched the surface. Fast forward to the Middle Ages.
Okay, time travel time.
We meet another fascinating group, the Bogomils. They were all about challenging the material world, embracing a communal lifestyle. You might even find it surprisingly familiar.
Really? Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me about these Bogomils. Who were they and what made them tick?
Picture this, the medieval world, obsessed with wealth, power, hierarchy, and then you have the Bogomils. They believed in a simpler life.
Yeah.
Focused on spirituality, equality, connection, lived in communities, shared everything, raised kids collectively, and they were pacifists.
Whoa, so they were like proto-hippies, centuries ahead of their time.
You could say that. Definitely pushing back against the norms of their era.
Sounds peaceful, but I have a feeling their story takes a turn. Utopian experiments rarely end with everyone holding hands.
Well, reading my mind. The Bogomils story highlights the challenges of going against the grain. Their beliefs were considered heretical by the Catholic Church.
Uh-oh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it led to persecution and ultimately genocide.
That's awful. It seems like aiming for peace and justice can come at a steep price.
It's a harsh reminder that progress isn't always a straight line, but even with that tragedy, the Bogomils offer us valuable insights. That human desire for connection, for meaning, it's powerful.
It makes you wonder, though, if we're wired for this connection, why does modern life feel so isolating?
That's a question Dr. Gotzi explores in depth. She argues that deep down, we are wired for cooperation and community. We evolved as social beings relying on each other. But somewhere along the line, the modern world, with its emphasis on individualism, competition, it's led many of us to feel disconnected.
Yeah, it's like we've traded belonging for stuff,
Hmm.
and we're still yearning for that connection. So what do we do about it?
That's where Dr. Gotzi's work gets really interesting. She doesn't just present these historical communities as like cool stories. She analyzes them, their successes, their failures, and she offers practical takeaways for anyone who wants to build a better community today.
Okay, now we're talking. I'm all about practical takeaways.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I have to ask, if these communities were so in tune with our, like, human need for connection, why didn't their model spread? Did they just fizzle out, or was there something else going on?
That's a great question. And Dr. Grazzi points out that throughout history, these alternative ways of life, especially the ones that challenge power structures, they often get pushed to the sidelines.
Like they're seen as a threat.
Sometimes. Sometimes they're actively suppressed, but other times they're just ignored, forgotten.
Like a collective amnesia almost.
Hmm.
We forget there are other ways to live, other ways to organize society.
Exactly. And that forgetting, it benefits those who benefit from the status quo.
Makes sense. But Dr. Gotzi's work is all about remembering, right? Bringing those forgotten stories back to life.
Absolutely. It's about showing us that alternatives have always existed.
So these communities faced challenges. Some met tragic ends, but they were onto something with this communal living thing. But how do we apply those lessons today? I can't exactly start a bogomil commune in my suburban neighborhood, can I?
Well, maybe not a full-fledged commune, but Dr. Gotzi argues that there are principles and practices from these communities that we can adapt. We don't have to go back in time, but we can learn from these experiments.
Okay, give me some examples. What can we learn from these utopian communities?
One key practice was sharing resources. The Pythagoreans shared property, the Bogomils share everything.
So it's not just about stuff, right? It's about sharing skills, labor, knowledge.
Right. It's about recognizing that we can accomplish more, live better when we work together, share what we have.
And that's super relevant today, right? We're
Oh.
facing these huge challenges like climate change, economic inequality. They need collective action.
Exactly. It's not just about individual solutions anymore.
Okay, sharing resources, working together.
Yeah.
What else?
Collective child rearing was huge too. Many communities recognize that raising kids isn't just on the parents. It takes a village.
Literally.
Exactly. Imagine kids having multiple caring adults in their lives, sharing knowledge, support.
That's a powerful image, especially today when so many parents are struggling. Kids are glued to screens.
It's about creating a more nurturing environment for everyone.
Okay, shared resources, collective child rearing. Got it. Anything else?
Dr. Godsey also emphasizes connection over consumption. Many of these communities, especially the Bogomils, rejected material wealth. They focused on spiritual growth and social connection.
So, like pushing back against consumerism, which is ironic because we're bombarded with messages to buy more stuff.
It's a constant battle, right? But it comes down to this. What's more important, our stuff or our relationships, our well-being?
It's like we need a total mindset shift.
Exactly. And Dr. Godsey offers suggestions for how we can do that. One idea she highlights is kith.
Kith. What's that?
It's an Old English word. It refers to your close acquaintances, your friends, neighbors, community.
Like an expanded definition of family.
Exactly. And reclaiming this idea of kith, it could be crucial for building stronger communities in the future.
I love that. Simple, but powerful. So we've got sharing resources, collective child rearing, prioritizing connection over consumption, embracing kith. But how do we actually put these into practice? It can feel overwhelming. Where do we even begin?
Dr. Godsey emphasizes that it doesn't have to be huge, radical changes. Start small, within your own community.
So focus on my little corner of the world.
Exactly. Organize a potluck with neighbors, volunteer, just make an effort to connect.
Those are great ideas. And speaking of connecting, Dr. Godsey's conversation with Dan Snow touches on a fascinating topic, space exploration.
Oh yeah, space utopian thinking. It's an interesting mix.
Okay, how do those two things even connect?
Well, as we venture further into space, we have a chance to rethink how we organize ourselves. Instead of replicating Earth's systems, why not design something new? Something more equitable, sustainable.
It's like a blank slate, right? A chance to create a new society.
Exactly. And the challenges of space, limited resources, harsh environments, the need for interdependence, it's like a testing ground for utopian ideals.
So space travel forces us to rethink how we want to live together.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe what we learn in space can even help us solve problems here on Earth.
I love that idea. By reaching for the stars, we might rediscover what matters here on Earth. This conversation has given me so much to think about. What about you? What's sticking with you?
I think the biggest takeaway is that humans have always dreamt of a better world, one with cooperation, equality, connection.
And even if those dreams haven't always come true, they offer valuable lessons. We have the power to imagine and create a different future. As we wrap up this deep dive into utopia, I keep coming back to this question. What if our obsession with individualism is actually holding us back?
It's like Dr. Gotzi is saying, maybe we need to shift our focus.
Right. Instead of always striving for independence and self-sufficiency.
What if we embraced a more communal way of being?
It sounds radical.
But think about it. What if neighbors were more like family?
Sharing resources, supporting each other, raising kids together.
It's actually not that far off from how humans evolved.
That's true. We were cooperative by nature.
We relied on each other for survival. It's only recently that we've come to prioritize individual achievement above all else.
So how do we change that? How do we start seeing the value in interdependence again?
Awareness is key. Recognizing that our current systems aren't the only way or even the best way.
And then taking action, right?
Exactly. Even small steps can make a difference.
Like what? Give me an example.
Reaching out to an elderly neighbor, offering to help a friend with childcare, joining a community garden, supporting a local cooperative.
I like that. Focusing on building those connections.
It all adds up. It creates a ripple effect.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the possibility.
Me too. It's inspiring to see how people throughout history have sought out these alternative ways of living.
And it gives me hope, knowing that we can draw on those examples to create a better future.
So as you go about your day, think about this. What if embracing aspects of communal living was the key to a happier, more sustainable world?
If you want to learn more about this, Dr. Gotzi's book, Everyday Utopia, is a must-read. It's full of incredible stories and insights.
And don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations of these fascinating topics.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep connecting.